In this video, I'm going to demonstrate how you can use our IP cameras and also those with motorized zoom lenses. An IP camera is a device that's like a computer. You can access it over a network. In this case, all of our IP cameras ship out with an IP address of 192.168.1.108. Using Internet Explorer or Firefox, you can log into the camera by typing in the URL like so, and then with the admin menu up, you can log in as a user and then control the camera. Obviously, this is a camera that we just took out of the box, so the username password is admin. If you are to put this on the internet, make sure you change your password to another that is an alphanumeric string of at least 6 characters. So it could be 6 characters, alphabets and numbers only, no special characters, no spaces. If you forget that password, in some cases, the camera cannot be reset and it would have to be sent to the factory. So now we've logged into the camera. A couple of things we see here is on this left side, it tells you what stream you're viewing or what quality level. Mainstream is the higher quality stream. In this case, this is a 1080p camera, so it's showing me the 1080p stream, and it tells me how much bandwidth it's using. So this is telling me it's using about 4,000 kilobits per second, or which is 4 megabits. And here, the substream is the second stream, or in some cases, you'll even have a third stream, which is a second substream. For certain higher level cameras. Now this is a lower resolution stream, as you can see. It's of lower image quality, and it shows me that it is about 200 kilobits per second. So this is great if you're using a very bad internet connection, or you're viewing over the phone, or you're going to be viewing multiple cameras over the phone using 3G or 4G. So let me show you where this comes into play. If you go into Setup, and it will show you under Video the different encoding settings, and under mainstream it's showing me that my mainstream is set to be 1080p 30 frames per second, 4 megabits for the bitrate, or 4096 kilobits per second. That's where that number on the top left hand side was coming from. You can alter this to reduce the bandwidth and still maintain 1080p quality, and you can toggle these settings. This number in the end, the bitrate, dictates how much bandwidth is being used. So if you have a slow internet connection with an upload speed that's less than 5 megabits, this is where you want to toggle this. Or you can use the substream to view your cameras, and if you have multiples, and in this case it's set to CIF resolution, which is actually half of your regular 960H, or you can even toggle it to D1 for better quality. So I'm going to show you what D1 can do, and this is going to be 15 frames per second. And again, bitrate here dictates really how much bandwidth is being used in the end. I'm going to go back to live mode. And here, as you can see, mainstream is using about 4, and substream is going to be using a lot less. But you see the image is much better than the last one because this is now at D1 versus CIF resolution. The other thing is, since this is a, basically you can consider an IP camera as a web camera, and this particular camera happens to have a zoom. So with those cameras that have a motorized zoom, you can click on this icon here to open up the zoom window, and you can actually use the zoom command to zoom in and out. Depending on how far you are from your object, you're going to need to give some time for the camera to actually adjust focus. In this case, this lens is actually a very high-powered lens on the camera, and it's meant to see actually over 100 feet away or so. As you can see, I've kind of showed you the best view. I'm really not utilizing the full zoom. This is just to show that these options are available, and then you can manually toggle focus and such if you have a specific application. And also iris if you have a camera mounted looking perhaps at vehicles passing by, or if there's an issue with daytime or nighttime viewing. Once you use the zoom though, however, it will basically bring the camera back out, and autofocus will come back on. Certain cameras have a built-in SD card capability like this camera does, and you can go and access that using the playback menu. I don't have an SD card in this computer, in this camera. However, it can show you that using the calendar-based method, you can select a day, and if there is video stored, it'll populate on the timeline below, and you can look back at it. It's a good way to capture a few hours worth of video, or perhaps a couple of days if you don't have a lot of motion happening. Now, you can also take a quick snapshot. It'll save to a default directory, or it can let you open up as a photo. And then you can also take quick snapshots. You can record straight to your hard drive through the browser, although we don't recommend that because sometimes your browser will crash depending on how strong your computer is and if there's any malware on the browser or on your computer, it'll cause issues. And if the camera has a microphone, you can use the audio icon to listen in. And some cameras even have two-way audio, and you can talk back through your computer's mic, or on the phones as well, there's the ability to talk back and have two-way communication. So here I'm going to show you an example of where manual focusing comes in handy when the autofocus doesn't work. All right. Now let's go into setup. There are a few things I'm going to show you here. Under conditions for certain cameras that have advanced level chips on them, you can actually adjust white balance, exposure. There are a lot of different settings to play around with and tweak them, and they're available through the web interface on the camera. They're all not available when you plug them into an NVR because the NVR is supposed to make things simple and just plug and play. You plug in cameras, record, without all this tweaking in there. This is only available when you actually log into the camera itself. You can also create different profiles for them to actually come into play depending on whether it's day or night, time of the day, and such. Audio cameras will allow you to adjust the sampling frequency and also the encoding method. And then here in all of our IP cameras, you have the ability to actually put an IP filter. If you're going to be accessing your cameras from a fixed IP address or a static IP address to another static IP address, then we recommend turning on the filter so that you don't have people that are unauthorized trying to connect to the camera. And one of the best features is even with a phone and you don't know what your IP is because it's going to change every time you're on the network, you can actually select a MAC address. So you can basically authenticate devices no matter where they are, whether they're going to be on a static or dynamic IP address, and enable them access without having to worry about what their current IP address is by selecting the MAC address authentication method. So that's basically the fingerprint for your device. You can also enable email trigger alerts by enabling motion detection on the camera, and we have an article that focuses on how to do that. Now the other thing to think about is the no IP DDNS option. So if you put this camera on a home network and your IP address is always changing because you have a dynamic IP address, then we recommend that you use no IP as a service. It's only $10 per year, and you can actually then let the camera update its IP address to the no IP servers. The connection menu allows you to basically change ports so that people who are out there maliciously scanning for ports on networks trying to hack cameras and such, if you change, basically there are two ports that you need to worry about, the TCP port and the HTTP port, if you're just going to be using the camera using a web browser. So I would suggest changing the HTTP port to 9000 and the TCP port to 9001. It's very rare someone using a bot who is going to be able to find this camera and think it's an IP camera on those ports. And make sure you port forward those ports over without any port translation over to the camera. So the exterior port should be 9000 going to 9000 on the internal device, and 9001 going to 9001 on the internal IP address. Also, you can enable OnVive here by just basically enabling it here, and for certain NVRs or other softwares you're not using that weren't purchased from CCTV Camera World, you can basically enable that for more compatibility. The video detect option lets you enable motion detection, and by clicking enable and save, you will actually enable it. Now you can decide if you want motion detection on only on certain days of the week and on certain hours of those days. Also, you can set a pre-record delay if you have motion detection on to up to a 300-second pre-record period before that motion occurs. And you can also select if there are only certain areas in your field of view that you want to be looking at for motion sensing. In this case, red is the area that will be covering or will be monitored for changes in pixels, i.e. motion, or and white would be the areas that are ignored for motion. And you can have about 4 different areas set with different colors here, and you can toggle their sensitivity. It gets really complex. So the red region, I'm making it very sensitive. The green regions, I'm making them less sensitive. So if something does occur, I don't want to be as sensitive on picking up motion from them. And here, if you set this send email and snapshot options, and you save, and you go back into network and email, and you enable SMTP settings, this will actually send you a motion alert to your email along with the snapshot. And there's an article, like I said, that covers that. If you are recording to the SD card, this recording schedule pertains to that. Usually it'd be a lot easier if you're just using a computer or the NVR to record. And you can even choose on the SD card whether you're recording the mainstream or the substream. Now in here, the system option lets you look at the serial number, create accounts in here, allow anonymous login if you want for basically, let's say if you're hosting a weather cam or something like that. Default the camera back to reset to factory settings. You can export your settings and import them should you decide to basically deploy multiple cameras that are identical. You can do a manual reboot if you need, or schedule an auto reboot. And if there's a firmware upgrade that's needed, you can upgrade the firmware from here. The version will tell you what the current firmware, serial number, and such are, and the log tells you how many times the camera's been accessed and such. And the online user tells you how many current users are online. The alarm option is available on certain cameras. If you get a pop-up like this on Internet Explorer, you want to allow it because it's asking for certain plugins to be enabled so that you can serve up those pages inside the camera's menu. Alarm is actually very rarely used, so I will ignore it, and it's not the same thing as motion detection. It's physical alarm connections to connect a PIR sensor or motion sensor to them. So that's our brief overview of what you can do with our IP cameras and how you can use them over the web. Now again, this was done on Windows 10 using Internet Explorer, not Edge. Just make sure you're using Internet Explorer, the latest version possible. Thank you for watching.